Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I am sharing with you how to crochet this Filet Crochet Santa. Now this version is for right-handed crocheters. You can find a link in the description box and in the top right hand corner here to find the left-handed version, and all that will mean is that the instructions are reversed where it needs to be so that you can make your Santa look exactly the same as mine. If you don't mind which side the Santa's hat is sitting, you can follow along with this video. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you never miss out another one of my crochet patterns or tutorials again. Now the materials I've used throughout my Filet Crochet blanket, which is the Jolly Holiday Blanket Crochet Along, is this Paintbox Yarns Aran, or Simply Aran. It's a size 4 yarn, so the same weight as a US worsted yarn, and it's 100% acrylic. The shade I've used for this version is Slate Green, which is shade number 226. The recommended hook size is a 5mm hook, but I've gone up just 0.5 millimeter so that the blanket has a little bit more drape and becomes super snuggly. Grab those materials and let's get started. So with your slip knot on your hook, we're going to start by making a chain by yarning over and pulling through, and we're making a chain of 66. Once you've made your chain of 66, we're going to be working one US double crochet into the 4th chain from hook. That's the same as a UK treble crochet, remembering that this loop on our hook does not count. There's number 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to yarn over the hook and insert our hook underneath the top loop of our chain. We're going to yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. These skip chains count as our first double crochet or UK treble crochet in this row. From here, we're going to be working one US double crochet into each chain across, and at the end of row 1, our stitch count is going to be 64 double crochets. So continue to work across, working one double crochet into each chain across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1. So once you've completed row 1, you should have a stitch count of 64 double crochets, remembering those skipped chain 3s count as your first double crochet. Going into row 2, we're going to make a turning chain of 3, and from here we're going to work into the next stitch and each stitch across, working a US double crochet. Because that chain 3 counts, we don't work into the same stitch as the chain 3. So from the next and across, we're going to be working one double crochet into the top of each stitch. At the end, we do need to work into the top of our turning chain. So I'll meet you at the end of row 2 to make sure that you've worked into the correct chain, ready to turn, ready for row 3. So once you've worked all the way across, working one double crochet into each stitch across, you should be here ready, looking at that skipped chain 3 we had from the beginning of row 1, and we're going to be working into the top of our chain 3. It's important that we work into the 3rd chain as opposed to any of the other ones, because that will prevent any holes. Now the way that I've turned my project, I have the back of the chain facing me, and I'm aiming my hook to pick up 2 loops of my chain. That's one, there we are, and then we can just complete our final stitch. By working into the top of the 3rd chain, it keeps those edges really neat. Working into the top of the turning chain and those chain 3 from the beginning gives us our stitch count of 64 double crochets, and that's going to be the same throughout this pattern. We always have to work one extra double crochet into the top of our turning chain. Going into row 3, we're going to start with our turning chain of 3, and we are then going to work one double crochet into each of the next 21 stitches. So our chain 3 counts, so we don't work into there, working into the next 21 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 21. We then make a chain of 2, and those chain 2s mean we skip the next 2 stitches to create our first open block. From here, we're going to yarn over, skip the next 2 and work one double crochet into the next. So those chains 2s and the skipped 2 stitches create the open block. We've just worked 1 double crochet. We're going to chain 2 and skip the next 2 stitches, and we're repeating this 8 times. So we're repeating from working a double crochet in the next. So we skip those 2 and double crochet, chain 2, skip the next 2 again before working the next double crochet. And what's going to happen is once we've worked all those 8 repeats, we will have the look of 8 open blocks. So we've repeated once, twice, 3 times. So we do our chain 2, skip 2, so this is number 4, chain 2, skip 2, so for number 5 we double crochet and chain 2, skip the next 2, ready for number 6, that's double crochet, chain 2, skip 2, number 7, double crochet, chain 2, skip the next 2, and this is number 8. We need to do our chain 2, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 open blocks. This will become the 9th open block. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches and yarn over, ready to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 15 stitches. So that was number 1, 2, 3, and this is going to take us all the way back to our turning chain. So work 1 double crochet into each of the next 15, and I'll meet you for working that final double crochet into the top of our turning chain. Just working number 15, and we're left with our turning chain to work into. As you can see, your 3rd chain gets a little bit tiny, so it's worth kind of inserting your hook, making sure you grab 2 loops. I have to force mine on because I chained too tightly. And then we work that final double crochet into the top of our turning chain. So at the end of row 3, you have 9 open blocks, and aren't they looking lovely? Mine is looking a bit smiley. That's okay, because as I work back into these open blocks on the way back, it will prevent it looking too smiley, I promise. Going into row 4, we start with our turning chain of 3. And we're going to start by working 1 double crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, and number 12. We're then going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, ready to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 28 stitches. So number 1 goes into the stitch just before our chain 2 space, and then we're going to work stitch number 2 and 3 into the chain 2 space. So we just yarn over, insert straight into that chain 2 space. Don't have to work into the actual chains, and yeah, they don't look perfectly straight, but they can be adjusted later. So we're going to continue across, working 1 double crochet into each of the next 28. I've already done 3, and I'll meet you for the remainder of row 3. Row 4, remember to work 2 double crochets into each of these chain 2 spaces, and that will help maintain our stitch count. Just working number 28 into that stitch just after that last open block, and we've filled in all those open blocks. We're then going to make a chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 18 stitches. And that will bring us all the way back to the top of our turning chain, so we can work that extra double crochet. So work 1 double crochet into each of the next 18, and I will meet you for I'll meet you to work into that turning chain. Once you've worked 1 double crochet into each of those next 18 stitches, all that's left to do is to work 1 double crochet into the top of your turning chain to complete row 4. We only have 2 open blocks on this row. You can see we're in the midst of Santa's beard. For row 5, we're going to be repeating row 2, where we work our turning chain of 3 and then work 1 double crochet into each stitch and chain across. So working 2 double crochets into each chain 2 space and 1 double crochet into each stitch, counting the chain 3 that we made at the beginning and working into our turning chain at the end of this row will maintain our stitch count of 64. So continue across, working 1 double crochet into each stitch and chain, and I will meet you for row 6. At the end of row 5, you still have your stitch count of 64, remembering of course to have worked into the top of your turning chain. For row 6, we're going to start with our turning chain of 3. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 9 stitches. That's number 1, 2, 3 and 9. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 34. This is number 1, 2, 3 and 34. Once you've worked 1 double crochet into each of the next 34, we're going to make our chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 15 stitches. And these 15 stitches will bring you all the way back to the top of your turning chain, where we just need to work that extra double crochet in the top of our turning chain. So at the end of row 6, you should have just 2 open blocks. For rows 7 and 8, we're going to be repeating row 5 and 6. So we're going to start by repeating row 5, which is that turning chain of 3, and then working 1 double crochet into each chain and stitch across, and then we're repeating row 6 that we've just worked again. So go ahead and repeat row 5 and 6 for rows 7 and 8. You can always use the timestamps if you need to, and I will meet you back for row 9. At the end of row 8, you should now have a pair of corresponding open blocks. Going into row 9, we're going to start with our turning chain of 3. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 33 stitches. That's 2, 3 and 33. We are then going to make our chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 27 stitches. Those 27 stitches will take you all the way back to your turning chain, so just remember to work 1 additional double crochet into the top of your turning chain, and I will meet you for row 10. So at the end of row 9, we just have 1 open block in the middle-ish there. For row 10, we start with our turning chain of 3. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 9 stitches. That's 2 and 9. Once you've worked 1 double crochet into each of the next 9, we are going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 13 stitches. That's 2. Once we've worked those 13 double crochets, we're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2 and skip the next 2. We're going to repeat that again, working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 13 stitches. So that's 2, 3 and 13. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 15 stitches, which will bring us all the way back to the top of our turning chain where we work that extra double crochet in there. Continue working those 15 double crochets and the top of that turning chain, and I'll meet you for row 11. So at the end of row 10 you'll be looking a little bit like this. We're going to go straight into row 11 where we start with our turning chain of 3. We're then going to be working 1 double crochet into each of the next 30 stitches. That's 1, 2 and 30. We're then going to chain 2, skip the chain 2 space, work 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip the next chain 2 space, 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip the next chain 2 space before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 24 stitches, which will bring you back to the top of your turning chain where you just need to work that extra double crochet. Continue across and I'll meet you for row 12. So at the end of row 11 you should be looking a little bit like that. And we're going to go straight into row 12 with our turning chain of 3, ready to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 9 stitches. That's 2, 3 and 9. We're then going to chain 2 and skip the next 2 stitches. From here we're going to be repeating working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10 stitches, chaining 2, skip 2, and we're going to work that 3 times. So this is the first time we've done 3 out of 10, 4, 5 and 10, chain 2, skip 2, ready to repeat that again 2 more times. So we're going to be working those 10 double crochets, chain 2, skip 2, 2 more times. Once you've repeated that twice more, I'll meet you for the remainder of row 12. Once you've finished that last repeat, you should be looking a little bit like that. You should have done those chain 2. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 9 stitches, which will bring us back to our turning chain. I'm going to work that final double crochet into the top of our turning chain and I'll be ready to meet you for the next row. So at the end of row 12 you should now be looking something like this, and we're going to go straight into row 13 working our turning chain of 3. We're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. That's 2, 3 and 6. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. That's 2, 3 and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10 stitches, and 10. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 16 stitches, and 16. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 18 stitches, which takes us back to working that extra double crochet into the top of our turning chain. Work those last few stitches and I'll meet you for row 14. So at the end of row 13 we are already starting to make Santa's bob all of his hat there, I think. We're going to be making our chain of 3 for the beginning of row 14 before we start working 1 double crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. 3 and 12. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 28 stitches. And 28. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next. Going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10. That's number 10. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 3, which brings us back to the top of our turning chain, where we're going to be working 1 double crochet into the top of our turning chain. So at the end of row 14, we have quite a lot going on, it looks, doesn't it? Going into row 15, we're going to start with our turning chain of 3. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3. We're going to chain 2, skip our chain 2 space before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10. Once we've worked those 10 double crochets, we're going to chain 2, skip the next chain 2 space before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. So that's 2, 3, and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 7 stitches. Once you've worked those 7, we're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip the next 2, and we're going to repeat that again, working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip 2, this time we're working 1 double crochet into each of the next 7. And 7. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and we're going to finally work 1 double crochet into each of the next 15 stitches, which will take us, well, 15 chains and stitches, bringing us all the way back to our beginning turning chain, where we work that extra double crochet into the top. Continue across and I will meet you for row 16. So this is where we are at the end of row 15. For row 16, we make our turning chain of 3. We are then going to begin by working 1 double crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. That's 2 and 12. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 before working 1 double crochet. Can't pick up both loops. Working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. That's 2, 3, and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip 2. We're then working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10. 3. Once we've worked those 10 double crochets, we're going to make our chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and this time we're going to be working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. 2, 3, and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip 2, and repeat that again, working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to chain 2 and repeat that for a final time. So we skip 2, working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. 2, 3, and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip 2, and then finally we're working 1 double crochet into each of the next 6, which takes us back to the top of our turning chain. Remember to work that extra double crochet into the top of your turning chain, and then we're going to be ready for row 17. In comparison, row 17 is relatively easy after the row we've just worked. We're going to start with our chain of 3. We're going to be working 1 double crochet into each of the next 9. That's 2 and 9. Oh, yarn's attacking me. We're then going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 51 stitches. That takes us all the way back to the top of our turning chain. So continue ahead working those 51 double crochets, working that extra double crochet into the top of your turning chain, and I'll meet you for row 18. It's a nice easy row, isn't it? Let's go into row 18. Once you've done your turning chain of 3, we begin by working 1 double crochet into each of the next 12. 3 and 12. We chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 28 stitches. And 28, we chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. That's 2, 3 and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip 2 and repeat that again, working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. That's 2, 3 and 4. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 6, which takes us back to the end of our row and to our turning chain, where we need to work that extra double crochet. Continuing on to row 19, we start with our turning chain of 3, and we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 24 stitches. Once we've worked those 24 double crochets, we're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4, 3 and 4. Going to chain 2, skip the next 2 and repeat that twice more, working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4, chain 2, skip 2. So this is for the second time, and I've lost count. That is 4, yep. Chain 2, skip, yep, skip 2, working 1 double crochet into the next 4 again for the final time. 3 and 4, chain 2, skip the next 2 before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 18, which takes us all the way back to the end of row 19, where we just need to work that extra double crochet into the top of our turning chain. Continue across and I'll meet you for row 20. So at the end of row 19, you'll be looking a little bit like that, with some nice open spaces in the middle of Santa's hat. That his hat or his eyes, who can tell? It's hard to see until the image is complete. Let's go into row 20. We start with our turning chain of 3, and we're working 1 double crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. There's number 12. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 7. And 7. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10. That's 2. We're going to chain 2 after those 10 double crochets, skip the next 2 before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 7. And 7, going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4, 3 and 4, chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and we're going to repeat that for a second time, working 1 double crochet into each of the next 4, chain 2, skip 2, and then we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 6, which will bring us back to our turning chain. Just need to work that extra double crochet into the top of our turning chain, and we'll be ready for row 21. So we're going to go straight into row 21 with our turning chain of 3. We're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 15 stitches. Once we've worked those 15 double crochets, we're going to make a chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 34 stitches. Once we've worked those 34 double crochets, we're going to make our chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 9 stitches, which brings us back to the top of our turning chain where we work that extra double crochet. I don't know, I'm smiling at my camera. You can't see that I'm smiling, but I am. This panel makes me very, very happy. Continue on to row 22. Oops, we start with our turning chain of 3. We're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. That's 1, 2 and 12. Going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to repeat the next step 10 times. We're going to work 1 double crochet, chain 2, skip 2 and repeat 9 more times. Now we've done number 1. We're going to do it for a total of 10 times. When you've done all your repeats, you will look like you've got 10 open blocks to count, and there'll be the 1 just to finish off. So repeat working 1 double crochet into the next, chain 2, skip 2 for a total of 10 times, and I'll meet you back once you've worked those. You should be looking a little bit like this with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is number 11 that we've just creating. From here, we're just going to remember to skip those next 2 stitches, and we're working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10. So once you've worked or started working there, you'll have 11 open blocks, just like we did at the beginning. So we're working 1 double crochet into each of the next 10 stitches. 10, chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, ready to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 6, which brings you back to your turning chain. Don't forget to work that extra double crochet into the top of that, and that will be the end of row 22. So for row 23 and 24, we're going to be repeating row 21 and 22. So you can use the timestamps below for each of the chapters and follow ahead for row 23 and 24, where we're repeating row 21 and 22, and I'll meet you for row 25. So at the end of row 24, you should be looking a little bit like this. And we are going to go straight into row 25, if I can find my yarn. So for row 25, we start with our turning chain of 3. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 51 stitches. Once we've worked those 51 double crochets, we're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 9, which takes us all the way back to our turning chain Just need to work that extra double crochet into the turning chain and we'll be ready for row 26. Now row 26, we're actually repeating row 25 again. So repeat row 25 for row 26 and I will meet you for row 27. So at the end of row 26, we've repeated row 25 and we are ready for row 27. We're going to start with our turning chain of 3. I've had to add on some extra yarn. I think I picked up my scrap ball where I've been working the odd strand here and there, or the last row. So I just had to add on a little bit more here. We've done our turning chain of 3 and then we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 12. That's 2 and 12. Going to chain 2, skip the next 2 before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 34 stitches. Once you've worked those 34 double crochets, we're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 12, which takes us back to our turning chain. Don't forget to work that extra into your turning chain and I'll meet you for row 28. For row 28, we start with our turning chain of 3. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 15 stitches. 2, 3, and 15. We're then going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 28 stitches. 2. Once we've worked those 28 double crochets, we make our chain of 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 15, which takes us back to our turning chain where we work that extra double crochet. Work those next few stitches and I'll meet you for row 29. So for row 29, we start with our turning chain of 3. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 18 stitches. 3. Once we've worked those 18 double crochets, we're ready to work the top of Santa's hat. So we're going to chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next, and then we're going to work our chain 2 and repeat that for a total of 8 times. This is number 1, so we're going to chain 2, skip 2 for number 2 and repeat it for a total of 8 times, and then I'll meet you for the remainder of row 29. I should say, once you've worked all your open blocks, it will look like you have 8 blocks once you've worked your repeats, and then I will meet you for the remainder of row 29. So we should be looking like we've just about finished off Santa's hat. Once you've repeated that 8 times, we're going to skip the next 2 and work 1 double crochet into each of the next 18. So you'll actually have a total of 9 open blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And we're working 1 double crochet into each of the next 18. That's number 3. And when you've worked 1 double crochet into each of the next 18, you've just got your turning chain to work into with that extra double crochet, and I'll meet you for row 30. So at the end of row 29, we have worked the whole of our beautiful Santa and closed his hat too, and row 30 is just a repeat of row 2. I'm not expecting you to remember what that was. We're doing a chain of 3 and then we're working 1 double crochet into each stitch and chain across. So you'll have a stitch count of 64 at the end of row 30 and your panel will be ready to go on an edge. Thank you as always for joining me for another one of my crochet tutorials. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and I will see you in the next video.